Hearthstone, Heroes of Warcraft, is a card game based around, well, the World of Warcraft franchise. Published in March of 2014 by Blizzard Entertainment, Hearthstone quickly became popular due to the fact that it was free to play, easy to learn, and felt somewhat nostalgic. I was 13 at the time it was released, and only noticed the game because I saw this cool looking steed in World of Warcraft, which you could only obtain if you installed and played Hearthstone. Young me then decided to download the game, and even though I wasn't a big fan of card games at the time, to my surprise, I was actually having fun. Unfortunately, the fun didn't last very long, because at the time I had a really shitty PC. So whenever I queued up for a match, the game would just crash instantly, which was pretty confusing at the time, because every other game that I've actively played sort of worked, but not this one card game. And after waiting and trying for about a month, I decided to uninstall the game and wait until I had enough money to buy a decent PC. After a few birthdays and Christmases, I finally amassed enough money and willpower to convince my, at the time, very skeptical parents. And after setting everything up, I remembered Hearthstone and how it's just sitting there all lonely in the Blizzard app. So, I reinstalled Hearthstone and opened up the game. And it has changed. A lot. It was very noticeable. The only quote-unquote good changes were multiple expansions, way more tavern brawls, and a PvE mode which I couldn't afford. But the most heartbreaking thing was that the tutorial and the few online matches that I remembered from the time that I played 3 years prior were nothing like the game was in 2017. The games were becoming less and less lasting. It was less about smart plays and knowing what your opponent does next, and more about taking turns punching someone in the face repeatedly to see who falls first. Not only that, but some cards released in the newest expansion trumped over others. So naturally, players built entire decks around them, and people facing these decks either had to concede, play meta as well, or watch their health slowly deplete each round for around 3 to 5 minutes. This is only partially Hearthstone's fault. As a matter of fact, most competitive games have a meta. Is meta a bad thing though? Well, that's a topic for a future video. But the point I'm trying to make is that every game that consistently gets patches shifts in the way it's being played. That was my experience a few years ago. I've decided to return to Hearthstone to see what has changed and ask myself the question, should you play Hearthstone again? So the first thing that struck my eyes was that a lot has changed. I'm going to cover everything that has been altered in little segments. There's going to be time marks in the description in the comments in case you're not interested in a certain topic. I know I'm kind of ruining my watch time like that and it's going to be promoted less, but hey, you got stuff to do, I got stuff to do. If you really want to help out this channel, make sure to subscribe. But enough stalling. Let's begin with the actual video. This game mode came out during the auto chess hype. In case you don't know what I mean or have forgotten, here's a little reminder. Around July of last year, both League of Legends and Dota 2 published an auto chess game. Valve published Dota Underlords and Riot published Teamfight Tactics. And both of these games had characters of their game respectively. And they were a massive success. As a matter of fact, Dota Underlords was the 4th place in the Steam charts, and Teamfight Tactics held the #1 spot on Twitch for quite a while. So it was kinda obvious that big companies wanted to put their name on something similar. Because money! There are, of course, a few additions with every auto chess game that you see, to keep some sort of uniqueness. But the core gameplay is around buying and positioning units,
the light dims, but we fight.
Upgrading yourself to get stronger units, combining units with 2 copies of a certain unit to create a stronger unit, and creating a team that synergizes well. And with that being said, how does Hearthstone do it? Not very differently. When you queue up and eventually find a match, you can decide out of a pool what hero you want to play. If you either paid real money or used 2,500 gold, you get a few more to decide from, but if you're a pleb like me, you won't. These heroes are essentially supposed to be you, and every hero has a different hero power. These powers can range from giving a minion more damage to digging for a minion. Look, it's no surprise that some heroes are way stronger than others. I mean, what did you expect behind a paywall that also gives you way more benefits than just 2 more heroes to choose from? Okay, calm down. It isn't the time for that yet. After picking the better one out of the 2, you're taken to Bob's Tavern and are immediately introduced into the recruit phase. Here you can decide what starter minion you want to buy first. It's just like Pokemon, actually. If Pokemon gave you the option to decide between 2 Magikarp and a Pidgey. And after making a decision, and then buying and placing the first minion down, you are greeted with the combat phase. Here, the opposing minions automatically take turns bashing their skull in until one dies. The winner then gets to fart on the opponent. After the battle is ended, you return to Bob's Tavern. You now have the option to either upgrade the tavern so you get stronger minions, buy more minions, reposition your minions, sell your useless minions, and use your hero power. And then the cycle repeats. You gradually start doing more damage after playing each round, so the beginning of the match is pretty slow, but one mistake in the end and you're dead. This isn't my main issue though. Not even the dumb paywall is my main issue. The problem that I have is the dumbass combat system and how it's completely RNG based. It sounds weird, right? Since a main aspect of auto chess games is RNG. Whether that is in what minion pool you have or anything somewhat related to random choosing. But believe it or not, I'm actually fine with a bit of luck involved in what minions you get or what hero you get to choose from. But what I absolutely despise is RNG based combat phases. Let's read through the way it works. And maybe you'll notice why I'm so mad about this. Your left most minion attacks first. Buffs during combat phase are temporary. Each attack is at a random enemy, unless one is taunt. Now maybe you don't understand what the last one means. I don't blame you. Imagine it's communism. Sounds good on paper, but it's garbage in practice. Picture this little scenario. You have reached late game, and only you and another player are alive. This will be the last combat phase, and it will inevitably decide the winner of the match. You have amassed a few normal units, and a 100 attack and 100 HP minion on the board. Your opponent also has a few normal units, a bit stronger than yours, but doesn't have a 100-100 minion. Instead, he has a 1-1 minion with poison. There is very little point for positioning if attacks are completely random. I don't need to tell you how this ends, because RNG sometimes gives bad players that which they don't deserve to have. A win. You are supposed to lose if you're new to a game. That is natural, because you're unfamiliar with it, and with every loss you realize what you did wrong and you start to improve automatically. If you're bad and win, you'll most likely pick up bad habits, which aren't going to help you once luck isn't there. Am I salty? Maybe. But it doesn't change the fact that luck shouldn't beat skill. Would I recommend Battlegrounds? No. I'm going to say something controversial here. I like the PvE mode more than PvP. Allow me to explain. Solo adventures are PvE content, and are, as the name implies, little adventures. Each story contains either a few chapters or is a dungeon run, and sometimes even both. Every story is somewhat different in how it plays out to be, so a general explanation cannot really be made, but I'll try my best to elaborate. The earlier stories, or more precisely, all stories up until Kobolds and Catacombs, are designed around you making a deck that counters the AI you will face. For example, there is a boss called Arc Thief Rafam in the League of Explorers story, and the only way to beat him is by creating a really bad deck. Since at the start of the game, he will take the card deck you are currently using. If you're facing him for the first time, this might catch you off guard. However, with that info, you're able to mash 30 unplayable cards together to create an abomination he will have to play with. And yes, to some people, including myself, this encounter isn't satisfying on repeat, because you keep winning if you keep giving him trash. But back then, it wasn't meant to be continuously played. Now obviously, every encounter was different, so most of the time you had to choose what strategy you want to use. And while not necessarily hard, it was entertaining nonetheless. Although you could make it significantly harder by playing the heroic version of a boss. But Blizzard realized that they can't be doing this shenanigan continuously. Enter Kobolds and Catacombs. And with that, the dungeon crawler mechanic newer Hearthstone players are familiar with. You play as a hero of your choosing, venturing into the unknown depths. Along your journey, which consists out of 8 battles, with the last one being a boss fight, you'll find loot. Every piece of loot makes you stronger, and you can decide which one you pick out of a possible 3. You'll also get to add 3 cards after each fight out of another 3 card pools, which will be added to your deck along the way. If you're lucky, you'll encounter a tavern or a secret boss as well. Taverns are like resting spots, where you can do multiple things depending on what choices can be made. You'll have different decisions every time you enter one. Secret bosses, well, they're rare, but they're not really hard. Some of them have requirements, Take for example Tad in the Kobolds and Catacombs adventure. He's a rare encounter you will eventually face. His hero power is that he pulls a minion out of his deck into the battlefield, which is pretty cool in itself, but once he runs out of minions, something interesting happens. Instead of pulling out nothing, he fishes out a sunken chest, and after killing the 0/1 chest, you'll receive Tad's Pole, a 1 mana, 1-time use weapon that summons a minion out of your opponent's deck. So the TLDR is, if you defeat a secret boss in a secret way, you'll sometimes get different loot. The thing I like most about the dungeon crawler that they added is that every run is different. And as a man that hates RNG, I actually kinda like the use of it here. It makes every run challenging, but not too hard. Hearthstone still continues with the dungeon crawler aspect in many new stories, but added a few things like choosable hero powers, anomaly mode, and obviously lore. I really hope that they continue adding PvE content in the future. The only thing I don't really like about the adventure mode is that the chapters are, who guessed it, stuck behind yet another paywall of either coins or real money. Would I recommend it though? Yes. After trying out the Battleground mode as well as the solo adventures, I've decided that it was time to play the quote-unquote actual game. Funny enough, even the aspect of deciding what deck to play has been changed. I've noticed this sooner than I wanted to, because I couldn't play the decks that I have made in the past, unless I switched the format of the game, from standard to wild. This was a new thing to me, and I had no idea what this meant. But apparently this has been around for a long time, so I either didn't notice it, or it was just introduced after I left. But here's a quick TLDR nonetheless. Wild format contains all cards from the day it was published to now. Standard format only contains the cards from the most recent expansions. But I do have two theories. Theory number 1. They did this so that the metas are forced to change. So games don't become stale because you keep fighting the same bloody matchups. Or theory number 2. To make you spend more money on card packs. But that's just a theory. Again! Nevertheless, I went through with the plan that I've set up, and the first step was obliterating every single one of my Rogue, Demon Hunter, Shaman and Druid cards to create 2 decks. A Tempo Mage and a rather defensive Cube Warlock. Why these 2 exactly? I don't know. They looked the most interesting. But what was my plan? I've decided to play 50 ranked games. And here's how that went.
My surprise, they also changed the way ranking works. It went from the old rank 25 to Legend, to the Bronze Silver Gold Shade. I don't know why they did this, but honestly, it's not even that important. My journey began at the lowest rank possible, which is Bronze 10. Normally, it would take 30 matches to leave Bronze, but thank God for a win streak mechanic. It didn't take me a long time to leave Bronze, because I didn't lose a single match. This isn't a flex either, because the people who I queued up against either misplayed and conceded, were FK, or had a terrible decks. That being said, I did enjoy the time there, not because I was going to win no matter what, but because A, some mistakes caught me off guard and I laughed a bit. And B, because you'd never know what they would end up playing. Which is important to me, since I'm someone who hates repetitivity. Anyways, when I eventually made it to Silver, I've started facing way better players, but some opponents still made avoidable errors, which essentially gave me a free win. I've also started to notice something, the higher I climbed. In Bronze I was facing every hero, with very random decks, but with every win that I was achieving, the game changed. In Silver the number of heroes I was facing reduced to 3, out of a possible 10. More of that later. Here and there I lost a few matches, but after some time, I reached Gold 10. I was almost at 50 games now, and still managed to reach Gold 5 before the game limit was reached. Gold was very similar to Silver, or at least that's my opinion. I didn't see much change in playstyle or meta being there at least. So, what have I learned, or better yet, noticed in these 50 games? Attentive people might have noticed that I was playing in the wild format, and you're correct. I'm not a big fan of the standard play, but luckily I had some friends from my old WoW days that gave me info on that. But I'll explain my part of the story first, because that's what I can describe fluently. I didn't count my wins or losses, and in hindsight I should have, but I estimate that I won around 90% of the games that I've played. As big of a flex as that is, I'm not proud or happy of these wins. I've started the first matches playing as my tempo mage, and winning games with that deck against people in bronze was the equivalent of beating up a guy in wheelchair. The wins were pointless to me. Unsatisfying. I never needed to do anything remotely special, like board clearing, lethal combos, playing against fatigue and little stuff like that, since all I did in my eyes was punching a helpless person continuously in the face. And you know what pisses me off more than continuously winning and not being able to appreciate a win for what it really is? That bronze, as much as I hated it, was the most fun I've had. Returning to what I've said earlier in this segment, silver was more challenging. However, the matchups became very predictable at one point, so I already knew what kind of cards my opponent was going to play. Many people still find joy in that, since most Hearthstone tournaments play with published decks as well, but this isn't something that I personally like. What do I mean with predictable matchups? 85% of the matches I've played from Silver 10 and up were against priests. The other 15% were against aggro hunter and tempo mages. Those are also the ones that got me some losses, since all they had to do was brainlessly throw cards at my face. And while I did manage to win way more than I've lost, I've spent more attention to my second monitor than I did on the game itself. I didn't even watch a movie, it was just my almost empty desktop with a recycle bin. I was enjoying moving my bin icon around my desktop more than waiting for my opponent to end his turn. And contrary to popular belief, I don't even have any mental illnesses. The game was just that boring to me. Another thing that I noticed was that I couldn't play Hearthstone for more than an hour before I've started getting a huge fucking headache. Keep in mind that on free days, I can spend up to 8 hours sitting in my chair playing games I enjoy, that are way harder on the eyes or mind, without getting headaches. And because someone watching this video probably wants to know what I have to say about standard play, but I don't have the patience or need to give myself unnecessary headaches again. I've asked 3 people that actively played it to describe it in a sentence. Their responses were:
I don't like the current meta, but sometimes it's fun.
May, it's okay.
I want to hear lost 3, don't talk.
Doesn't sound like fun to me. Would I recom? Common, you already know the answer to that, I don't have to spell it out.
I have to give Hearthstone some credit though, since not everything they do is bad. For example, I really like the card art. The flavor text to a card are pretty funny at times too. It even allows for some creativity, to some degree, with what deck you want to decide to create and play, but don't expect to win much playing it. I also really like Ben Brode, but who doesn't? And the game is beginner friendly, with decent PvE content. But I'm biased, so here's more bad stuff. The Blitzchung controversy. In case you haven't heard of this incident, allow me to fill you in. It happened in October of last year, during the Hearthstone Grandmaster streaming event in Taiwan. A pro player named Blitzchung was interviewed after his match, during which he had donned a mask which not only looks similar to mine, but resembles the mask worn by Hong Kong protesters. He then said the most known slogan, "Liberate Hong Kong, the revolution of our times." In case you don't even know what that is about, then you must have been living under a rock. But I'll leave a link to a bit of information in the description down below. So what does this all have to do with a pro player? Going back to what I said earlier, he clearly showed his support to those fighting for their rights, much to the discontent of China. And guess what? China is Blizzard's biggest moneymaker. So they cut the stream, banned Blitzchung from the tournament and future tournaments for a year, and took his prize money, which was around $4,000. But not only that, they decided to fire both streamcasters as well, and then decided to make a tweet condemning the pro player's actions and tried to warn us that voicing your political opinion is not allowed. But it didn't take long for people to catch up what was really happening. And thus, #BoycottBlizzard was made. Many people cancelled purchases, whether it was a World of Warcraft subscription or the pre-order of the now infamously known shitty Warcraft 3 remake, in an effort to make Blizzard realize that human rights are worth more than money. Others made fan art. Oh, and this also sort of happened. They did eventually apologize. But it just proves the fact that they are really just interested in money than the game itself. Or at least they were. Speaking of money hungry, let's get right into the next aspect. The card packs. It's no secret that buying cards will make you advance faster. And yes, I am fully aware that pro players sometimes say stuff like this. Yeah, you can win and climb as a free-to-play, but they are still ignoring the most important fact. Efficiency. You could potentially kill someone with a spoon if you're tenacious enough, but why not do the job faster with a gun? The average cost for a good meta deck is between 6,000 and 10,000 dust, which is around 50 to 120 US dollars, depending on if you want to purchase a bundle or blessed with luck. But there's always been people that have been against the fact that a game is pay to win. So let me double down on the statement that it is, by bringing up the two most used arguments against pay to win. 1. Free-to-play cards are better. Sure, some free-to-play cards will always see play, but you can't deny this shit. And 2, you can earn gold yourself. Purchase packs and then disenchant cards into dust to create new ones. An active Hearthstone player would probably make around 100 gold a day. 60 gold on average with a daily quest and some extra just for playing the game. That is equivalent to one card pack. A card pack, on average, has around 100 dust, meaning you would have to play Hearthstone actively for around 60 to 100 days before you can actually make a deck to efficiently climb. Also, every 4 months, a new expansion comes out. That means that a free-to-play player is only able to create, at most, 2 decks before he needs to play even more to buy just card packs. And yes, there are ways around that like the arena, and that's how I made most of my cards back in the day. But that's just frustrating after a while. So, should you play Hearthstone again? Whether or not you do it is completely your decision. My experience with the game was rather negatively. If you're someone who does like the game, good for you. I have nothing against your opinion. But if I either managed to change your look on the game, or you already were skeptical, and you really want to play a card game, try playing Legends of Runeterra. Sorry for the wait. I hope you guys liked it. And any comments regarding criticism or ideas for future videos will be much appreciated. Now, if you excuse me, I have somewhere I need to be.